I continue to read the book on Grand Strategy by John Lewis Geddes. This is chapter 1, 11. So, is it possible to teach grand strategy, or at least the common sense that sustains it? If Lincoln, with as little formal education as any American president, learned what he needed to know from self-prescribed reading and self-assessed experience, can't we do the same? The simple answer is that Lincoln was a genius, and most of us aren't. Shakespeare, it appears, had no writing tutor. Does nobody else then need one? It's worth remembering also that Lincoln and Shakespeare had a lifetime to become who they were. Young people today don't, because society so sharply segregates general education, professional training, assent within an organization, responsibility for it, and then retirement. This worsens a problem Henry Kissinger identified long ago, that the intellectual capital leaders accumulate prior to reaching the top is all they will be able to draw on while at the top. There's less time now than Lincoln had to learn anything new. That leaves it to the academy to shape the minds of its students while it has their attention. But the academic mind is itself divided. A gap has opened between the study of history and the construction of a theory, both of which are needed if ends are to be aligned with means. Historians, knowing that their field rewards specialized research, tend to avoid the generalizations upon which theories depend. They thereby deny complexity, the simplicities that guide us through it. Theorists, keen to be seen as social scientists, seek reproducibility in results that replaces complexity with simplicity in the pursuit of predictability. Both communities neglect relationships between the general and the particular, between universal and local knowledge, that nurture strategic thinking, and both, as if to add opacity to this insufficiency, too often write badly. There is an older way, though, in which history and theory have worked together. Machiavelli hints at it in the dedicatory letter to the prince, where he values nothing so much as the knowledge of the actions of a great man, learned by me from long experience with modern things and a continuous reading of ancient ones. This he has distilled into one small volume, meant to give you, his patron Lorenzo de' Medici, the capacity to be able to understand in a very short time all that I, meaning Machiavelli, have learned and understood in so many years and with so many hardships and dangers for myself. Carl von Clausewitz, in his monumental but incomplete classic on war, develops Machiavelli's method more fully. History alone, he argues, is just a long string of stories. That doesn't mean they're useless, though, because a theory, one conceived of as a distillation, keeps you from having to listen to them all again. There isn't time for that when you're about to go into combat or any other fraught field of endeavor. But you can't just wander around either, like Tolstoy's Pierre et Borodino. This is where training comes in. The well-trained soldier will surely perform better than one with no preparation at all. But what is training? As Clausewitz understands it, it's being able to draw upon principles extending across time and space, so that you will have a sense of what has worked before and what hasn't. You then apply these to the situation at hand. That's the role of skill. The result is a plan, informed by the past, linked to the present, for achieving some future goal. The engagement, however, won't in all respects follow the plan. Not only will its outcome depend on what the other side does, the known unknowns, of which former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld famously spoke, but it will also reflect unknown unknowns, which are all the things that can go wrong before you have even encountered an adversary. Together, these constitute what Clausewitz called friction, the collision of theory with reality, about which Artabanus tried to warn Xerxes many centuries earlier at the Hellespont. The only solution then is to improvise. But this is not just making it up as you go along. Maybe you will stick to the plan. Maybe you will modify it. Maybe you will scrap it altogether. Like Lincoln, though, you will know your compass heading. Whatever the unknowns that lie between you and your destination, you will have in your mind a range of options for dealing with these, based as if from Machiavelli upon hard-won lessons from those who have gone before. The rest is up to you. 12. Boats crossing the Hellespont these days still connect battlefields, as Xerxes' bridges once did. Troy lies just to the south on the Asian side. Gallipoli on the European is even closer. Now, the vessels are ferries though, and the armies they transport are tourists, taking advantage of the fact that 30 centuries separate sites only about 30 miles apart. There is even time in a single day to take in the Trojan horse at Canakkale. Not the real one, of course, but the prop left over from the 2004 Brad Pitt movie. The scene lacks the grandeur of what Xerxes saw from his promontory in 480 BCE, but it makes an important point that combat experience is rarer even than in the recent past. For whatever reason, the fear that a world war could annihilate all its participants. The shift back to the smaller wars that only partially engage societies conducting them. Perhaps just good luck. Fewer people find themselves on battlefields today fighting battles. The sightseers are taking over. Clausewitz's concept of training, however, retains its relevance. It's the best protection we have against strategies getting stupider as they become grander, a recurring problem in peace as well as war. It's the only way to combine the apparent opposites of planning and improvisation, to teach the common sense that comes from knowing when to be a hedgehog and when a fox, where, though if not in the military, and if only inadequately within the academy or on the job, can young people today get such an education. The Battle of Waterloo was won on the playing fields of Eton. The Duke of Wellington did not say, although as the Victorian era's principal supplier of epigrams, he certainly should have. For apart from war and the preparation for war, it is in competitive athletics that the Clausewitzian combination of a distilled past, a planned present, and an uncertain future most explicitly come together, with a fitness more fashionable now than in the age of the great Duke. There is more participation in games than ever before. But what does that get you? And what does it have to do with a grand strategy? You learn to play the game by having a coach, literally a trainer, who does what drill instructors used to do when military service was mandatory. Teach the basics, build stamina, enforce discipline, encourage collaboration, show you how to fail and to recover from failure. Once the game begins, though, your coach can only shout or sulk from the sidelines. You and your teammates are on your own. Still, you will all do better for having been coached. It's not for nothing that coaches' salaries at certain American universities exceed those of the presidents who have recruited them. Does any of this mean, though, that while playing the game you have been a hedgehog or a fox? You would probably regard the question as silly because you had been both. You had a hedgehog-like plan. You modify it as needed in a fox-like manner, and you won or lost depending on whether it worked or didn't. You will find it hard to say, looking back when you had been which. Instead, you held opposing ideas in your mind as you functioned. It's much the same in most aspects of life, where we make such choices instinctively or almost so. As authority increases, however, so does self-consciousness. With more people watching, practice becomes performance. Reputations now matter, narrowing the freedom to be flexible. Leaders who have reached the top, like Xerox or Tech-Logs experts, can become prisoners of their own preeminence. They lock themselves into roles from which they can't escape. This, then, is a book about the mental hellsponds that divide such leadership, on one shore from common sense on the other. This, then, is a book about the mental hellspound that divides such leadership, on one shore from common sense on the other. There ought to be free and frequent crossings between them, for it's only with such exchanges that grand strategies, alignments of means with ends, become possible. But the currents are swift, the winds are untrustworthy, and the bridges are fragile. There is no further need now to intimidate or propitiate water in the manner of Xerox, but by analyzing how others, since that monarch, have managed the oppositions of a logic and leadership, we can perhaps coach ourselves for the crossings we will sooner or later have to make. That's the end of chapter 1.